In a world where everyone knows everything. Yeah, right. One dad stands below everyone and yells, "I know nothing."
Please welcome.
This is the Dad Who Knows Nothing podcast.
All right, welcome everyone. This is the Dad Who Knows Nothing podcast. I am so honored to have Keith Willard here. Now, Keith Willard is the owner of Keith Willard Events, and that's a South Florida-based event planning company working from concept to completion for social, business, and nonprofit occasions. And I thought he'd be great to have on the show for my listeners, for all you listeners, because if you're a parent, if you're a dad, you're a parent, or just in general, more than likely you're going to be involved in some type of event planning, whether you do it yourself or you hire an expert like Keith. And so Keith has had tremendous success. He's done intimate dinners with a private chef to parties with thousands of participants for a gala at Madame Tussauds in London. So, or I probably butchered that, Keith. It's not, is it Tussauds?
Yeah, Madame Tussauds. Yeah.
Madame Tussauds. See, there you go. So he's also very good at pronunciation, which is something that I'm lacking right now. So Keith, obviously you've had great success in this space. Appreciate you giving me a few minutes of what I'm sure is a very busy schedule to talk to me today.
No, thank you for having me on the show. I'm excited to have this conversation because I think it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know, right? And so when people get into the world of wedding and event planning, there are many times and many obstacles that they could have avoided or should avoid if they just had a little bit of information. So anytime I get a chance to be able to do something like this, I jump at it.
Awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about, if you could start out, I mean, obviously you probably have a story that could probably take a few hours just because of all the things that you've been involved in and all the success that you've had, but just give me a high level version of what brought you to being an entrepreneur in this space and how you got here.
I hate to say it, but when I was 6 years old, no, I'm kidding. No, actually that's not too far off the beat. I mean, I feel like I was born to do this. And so even when I was 6 years old, I don't know if people remember this, but there used to be a Jerry Lewis telethon where you would have the milk cartons and you put the pennies in it. And so I was the kid that had like the the yard full of stuff where people had to pay a penny to come into the event. And that's how I raised money for Jerry Lewis, for the Jerry Lewis telethon. And so, fast forward to graduating from college, and I started as an executive director of a local not-for-profit in Dallas. And one of the big things that when it's a small not-for-profit, you don't have the same amount of grants and funding that comes from government sources as some of these larger not-for-profits have. And so what do you do to raise money? Well, you throw parties, you throw events. And so I got very good at figuring out what people wanted to go to and also making my dollar stretch as far as possible because I wanted to raise as much money as possible for the not-for-profit. And it was actually at one of those events that a gentleman named Russell Holloway, who was the owner of a company called Feature Presentations, asked if I had ever thought about being an event planner. And at that point, not really. I mean, I was really actually focused on the not-for-profit world. And so I decided to take a chance and jump on board. And within a couple of weeks, I was traveling all over the world doing these crazy events. And back then it was Nokia. Nokia was their big client back then, if people remember that cell phone company.
I do.
Kind of gone now. And so, I slowly, I ended up starting my own company in Texas, decided I wanted to move to Florida, had burned myself out because I had been working too hard, as many entrepreneurs probably understand out there. And so when I moved to Florida, I decided that I was going to work for the corporation. I was going to go away from being an entrepreneur and I was going to go into the corporate world. And so I started working for hotels, starting with Hyatt Pier 66, and then culminating 7 years later as the director of catering for Ritz-Carlton. So I worked my way up through the hotel. But during that time, I had so many people that said, we would love for you to do our event, but we don't want to do it at this hotel. We want to do it at a different hotel, which meant I didn't do a good job of selling. And so I decided that it was time to go back into events, doing my own thing, owning my own company. But this time I actually decided that I was going to do weddings because I found my love of social events when I was working for hotels, and weddings in particular, because there's just something magical about two people getting married in front of their loved ones. I mean, there's nothing else like it. And being able to produce something like that that people can remember back on fondly for years and generations to come is amazing. I mean, there's not a lot of people that have that kind of job that has that kind of effect on somebody else's life like that. And so 7 years ago, I opened up Keith Willard Events, and it's been kind of nonstop since then.
All right,
That
man.
was a super short
Yeah,
version
that
of it.
was a
Yeah.
super short story. I was reading through some of the rest of the background, and obviously you've had some really good successes. First, real quick, any good stories from the hotel days?
Well, I will tell you this. I hope people are messy. Let me just say this.
Mm,
You know, I never really understood how people can be so nasty when they stay at a hotel. There's something that just leaves their brain about not wanting to pick up after themselves or trashing a hotel room more than they would their own place. I mean, really? I mean, there would be times I would walk into a hotel room and you want to put on a mask and gloves, and this was before COVID, just to walk into the room. Uh, and what people do in hotel rooms is a whole nother world. That's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother podcast. Probably not appropriate for, the dad who knew nothing. That-
it's probably
but
something
anyway,
I don't want to know much about. So there you go.
yeah. Now there are some really fairly graphic stories, but things falling on kids' heads that had been part of the romance of somebody else's night the night before, that kind of
Mm.
stuff. So yeah, it gets a little crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
I never understood that either with hotel rooms because I'm the kind of person that when I go, I almost I don't want them to pick up the room and come in
me,
and tidy up the room each night. So I
me
keep it
too.
pretty clean so that they don't have to do it. And I put on the do not disturb and just clean it once when I leave. I'll give you the tip and we'll
Yeah.
go our way. Yeah,
I
I
mean, I
never
make my
understood
own
that.
bed. I
Yeah,
make my
exactly.
bed at a
Yep.
hotel room, and everybody's like, "But you have somebody making your." I'm like, "Yes, but I don't want anybody in my room. But I
Right.
want it to be neat when I get back. So why wouldn't I?" Yeah, people. It's funny what happens to people when they think nobody's watching.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also the sense of entitlement that sometimes comes with people saying, "Well, I paid for this."
Ah,
So then it's like, okay, but it didn't give you the right to you didn't pay for the right to destroy it, right?
right.
That's
So think about rental car. We all know about the rental car
right,
scenario,
right.
how people tear up a rental car. Just transfer that
Yep,
to staying at a hotel. It's
yep.
exactly the same thing. People do exactly the same thing that they do to rental cars to the rooms that they sleep in.
Yeah,
You
that's
know,
a good point.
yeah. So
All right.
kudos to the hotel profession, because the hospitality, they really do go above and beyond. People have no idea like how much they really go through in order to keep a smile on their face the whole time. So good for them.
Yeah, the one thing that I wish here's an entrepreneurial thing that I wish somebody
Mm,
could take care of is I wish that they would find a way to make it easy when you don't have cash to leave
yeah.
your tip for the maid or whoever's taking care of you at the hotel.
Right.
Like a square thing to do on your phone and then you can electronically pay them. But the problem is that so much of that and the thing that you can't get past because I've looked at it is so much of this is under the table. And so anytime there's some type of transaction
Yeah.
receipt, right, or documentation. But in my mind, it's like, is that worth not getting the tip? Because I've felt bad because sometimes I haven't been able to even leave anything because I haven't had cash. And
Oh,
so many people don't have cash anymore.
well, and that's a real problem too, because if you do anything through the hotel, you're gonna get the plus, which is plus service charge plus tax.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of an important lesson for anything that you do through a hotel, and that means even booking your wedding. You always have to think about the plus, which is typically 30%,
Yeah.
24% service
Yeah.
charge, and then 7 to 9% sales tax.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about trying to leave a tip for somebody in a room, that means that the hotel's going to take 30%. And so now that tip has gotten even smaller. So if you leave them $20, what do they get? 12? It's like,
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
it's worth going to the cash machine and paying the $3.49 transaction fee, so that way the hotel doesn't get its 30%.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wish there
exactly.
was an easier way. Yeah, but
All right.
but
So
that's
when
why
we're
you need more cash machines. That's it. Yeah.
yeah, true. And well, I guess we're getting there from an online banking perspective where you're not really getting hit with as many fees anymore. So I guess we're getting a little bit better in that area too, where it
We'll
doesn't
see.
cost so much to get an ATM to use it.
Well, and so actually, this is a really good thing. Since we're talking about being entrepreneurs, maybe there's an entrepreneur out there that can figure out a way to be able to leave a tip in a hotel room for the maids that has a smaller fee than what it would have been if you went through the hotel.
Yeah. It's
A
almost like
square
you
for tipping.
yeah, it's almost like you leave them something and then they can go to the ATM and actually get the cash out. And there you go.
Right? I mean, that would be interesting. I think
Yeah.
that would be a kind of an interesting idea. But anyway.
Yeah. All right. So let's get to event planning because I
Yes.
definitely want to talk through where your expertise lies. So obviously weddings are a big that's probably accounts for the vast majority of what people think of when they think of event planning. But
Yeah.
when you look at event planning overall, what are some red flags to look out for if you're going to plan an event? What should you be looking out for right at the beginning?
Okay, so if it's a corporate event, I would look at minimums, food and beverage minimums. I would
Mhm.
look at costs of sodas. It's amazing what a non-alcoholic beverage will cost you
Mhm.
per soda can when doing a corporate event, especially if you're doing a conference or convention. That $6 can of Coke or $6 bottle of water adds up quickly when you multiply it by several thousand over
Right.
several days, and then you
Mhm.
add your plus to it. So I would look at that. I would also I compare their catering menus to their banquet menus. It's amazing how many times a hotel's price point is different in their catering menus and their banquet menus, even though it's the same product. So if they're the same, great. If they're different, that raises a red flag, because to me I feel like there's a little taking advantage of the corporate world. Um, I think that having minimum number of rooms is a really big issue, both for corporations and for individuals. Trying to get a room block is hard, because hotels base a lot of their revenue on what they call a transient rate, which means basically a tourist. A tourist is going to pay a much higher rate than somebody that has a room block, probably sometimes even twice as much as what they would give you in a room block scenario. Um, and then also how people react to you, as far as like having that initial conversation. If they jump ahead and don't listen to what you actually need, that's a
Mhm.
red flag to me in a
Mhm.
big way. I want to hear about your event first, and then process it, and then talk about the possibilities. you know but if somebody says, well, this is what we do and this is your minimum, and I know nothing else about your event except that you walk through my door, that's a big red flag.
Yeah, that makes sense. So many times you see like in movies or you read about in magazines or books where the event planner just comes in with this big display
Yes.
and this big proposal of what they want to do, and they haven't talked to the individual yet.
Well,
And
and or they're talking about their last wedding. I don't want to
right,
hear about your last wedding.
right,
I
exactly.
want to hear about your wedding. It's
Hmm.
my job is not to make my perfect event. My job is to make your perfect event. And I'm a huge fan of saying that probably way too many times. But I think that it's an important piece to get across, to couples and to people out there. It's like, have a wedding planner that listens to you, have a planner that listens to you and pays attention to the budget, the
Mm,
big B word.
yeah,
If they don't listen to the number that you're trying to keep within, then how are they supposed to give you the right vendors or give you the right information to keep you in there if they don't know what the number is?
yeah, that makes
You know,
sense. So
yeah,
so that's obviously large scale, right? And
right.
uh, big events, things like that. What if you're planning something at home? What should a person think about if you're doing much smaller scale?
Yeah.
Maybe what should they be thinking about in that setting?
I would, I, when, if you're going to do something in your house, I would plan in reverse. And I know that sounds weird, but I would think about end of night first. What happens to the trash? What happens to anybody that's had too much to drink? What happens to any cars that are left over? What happens to all the dishes and the mess in the house, right? And take care of those things first. Don't skimp on labor when it comes to events in your house, because believe me, at the end of the night, you're going to be so tired. You're really not going to be the one that wants to load the dishwasher and empty out the trash and then sanitize out all the tabletops.
Yeah.
Have somebody there that will help you. It's fairly inexpensive. I mean, there's most of the labor companies. There just look through Google. There's a million different agencies that are reputable and licensed and insured, and they're usually like $25 an hour for an individual, and that'll be the best $150 you've spent on your event, just having somebody there that takes out the trash.
Yeah.
Also because of parking, and again, thinking in reverse, talk to your HOA, make sure that you know what side of the street people are supposed to be parking on and where they're supposed to be parked, because there's nothing worse than having this great event only for people to walk outside and their cars are towed. And it's like,
Yeah.
what? Oh my God, what happened to the cars? And the first thing people think, oh, it's stolen. Many times it's because the tow truck came by and took it. So think of the HOA. And then if you're going to do another event, if you're going to do an event in your house, make sure that you're a good host. A lot of times when we plan our events in our home, we're inviting people that may not know each other. And as a good host, it's my responsibility to make them feel comfortable, first of all, and then to introduce them to other people and find a common denominator. Like if, let's say, Mary comes in, Mary, oh my God, it's so great to see you, blah, blah, blah. Let me introduce you to Jane. Mary, you love to camp. And Jane, didn't you just get back from a camping trip? Boom. All of a sudden they have something to talk about. And then you can go and check on the rest of your guests. Right. I think that's really important. Make sure that you drop your lighting 50%. Bright lighting does nobody any good in any sense of the word. Oof, you got to have soft lighting, and turn off any overhead, like that light bulb on the fan. Please turn that off. That for some reason there's just a glaring vibe in there. It's like I feel like I'm being questioned by the police when I walk into a room and there's that light bulb going. It's like, oh yeah, so turn that off. And make sure that that people have access to food and beverage, and that they have access to being able to sit down and eat it efficiently. Have tables and coasters readily available everywhere. I mean, those are kind of the basics that I'd start with.
So probably not like a chicken wing on a small plate while also holding a glass of wine or something.
Yeah, but
probably not going to work.
That has its place. I have to tell you, a chicken wing and a glass of wine has its place. I mean, there's football nights and stuff like that. That obviously it would probably be beer or something else, but that does have its place. But know your audience, know who you're inviting, and be aware of any problem children in advance. This is a big one. Don't invite anybody into your home that you would not have dinner with. Big one. There is nothing more stressful than having somebody you don't really like in your home, because now you've got kind of the enemy at the gates. It's like, I really don't want them seeing my life. Right. And sometimes you have to, because of, political correctness. I would say figure out a way not to invite them that's also politically correct, because it will ruin your night faster than anything else, than having somebody that you don't like in your home.
Yeah. Sometimes it's because they're the friend of a friend of a friend, and there'd be hurt feelings or things like that. But what I've found is as I've grown and gotten older, if I'm not invited to a party, especially an event, I'm actually, it's not that I'm relieved, but I actually feel like, okay, if I wasn't invited, that made somebody's job easier to determine who was going to be there.
See,
they were
I'm relieved.
And I'm good. I'm good. Right.
I'm like, oh, I didn't get invited. Good.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Happy days. I'm going to sit my ass on the couch. Thank you very much. I love it.
Exactly.
There's actually an event tonight that I'm actually like, oh, do I really have to go to this thing? A networking event that I'm supposed to go to, but it's one of those things that I kind of have to, if you're in this industry, it's, and luckily I really like the caterer that's throwing it, but yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Once you get older, the nice thing is that you get to say no because
Mhm.
you feel comfortable being able to say no. And the second thing is you don't have to go to stuff that you don't want to.
Right.
It's like, so
And you don't
I
have
love,
to invite people that you don't want to.
yes, right.
That's the
It's like,
other.
it's my house, it's my home. If I
Right.
don't want to invite you, that's my choice, you know. But that's part of the joy of getting older. There are so many other things that are not joyous about getting older.
So
We will
true.
take this one.
Yes. This will be in the win column. We'll put this in the win column.
Exactly.
All right.
That's funny.
So now let's talk about weddings, because we know
Yes.
that this is your forte and a
Mhm.
very special event that is near and dear to, I obviously got married, father to 3 daughters who one or more of them may get married at some point in the future. So what are the 5 pillars of a wedding?
Wow, that's almost like I wrote this question. I'm kidding. No, I mean
Truth be
this
told,
is
Keith
actually
did write this question.
did I? Oh, I
Yeah.
get it. Well, because there actually are 5 pillars to a wedding, and it's venue, catering, florals, photography, and music.
Mm,
Right. So if you have those 5 things, you have a wedding, right? Catering, venue, florals, photography, music. Because then you have somebody to record the event, you have a place to have the event, you have a place to somebody that's being fed, and then you have music for people to dance to. Done. Everything else outside of that is fluff. It's add-ons, it's extras. And I know there's going to be people out there that are like, man, there's something, videography. You got to have a videography. It's not a basic. It's not a pillar. I think that if you have the right venue that matches who you are and your kind of aesthetic, and you have the right caterer that is going to provide a great meal, and you have a photographer that that's going to capture your night beautifully, and if you have entertainment that is going to keep people on the dance floor, and you have florals that are going to be, and then when I say florals, I also mean decor, florals and decor. That's kind
mhm,
of one area, and so it's going to be beautiful. Done. Right.
mhm.
Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Favors are not a pillar. I hate favors. I think favors are a huge waste of money. And I just think it's one of those areas in the wedding market that I don't understand how it actually became a thing. Like, when did somebody else's name on a wine glass with a random date became a thing that I want to keep in my house?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I tell people, I'm like, forget the favors, do something that people are going to remember, add to the memory, add to the experience, but don't give them a piece of plastic that they're going to throw away. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a great point. I can't recall from all the weddings that I've been to if I don't know where any of those favors are. So it just confirms your point.
Right. If it's a cookie, yay, I'll take a
Yeah.
cookie. But many times those cookies aren't even good. They're like
Right. They're
cardboard
not.
because they've been like bagged and wrapped and they've been sitting in, somebody's car for a week. But I think that if you're gonna do a favor, food is obviously gonna be up there. Liquor of some sort or a beverage of some sort is gonna be up there. Something that people can consume
Mhm,
they're gonna probably take that with them. But
mhm.
even then, you're gonna lose about 20%. 20% of it's gonna be left on the table.
Yep.
Any other favors, you're talking about 40% is going to be left behind. That's a lot of money. I mean, that's a budget buster, as I say, it's a budget buster. Why not take that money and put it for an extra hour of photography, or have a 2 live musicians that play along with your DJ, to have a DJ live so you get that kind of big band experience without the cost. There's so many opportunities to use your money wisely when it comes to planning a wedding. And
Yep.
obviously I can go off trail on this, so you may have to like wrangle me in.
Well, money is obviously such a big consideration with this. So when you
Yeah.
talk to clients and it's these 5 pillars of that you need for the wedding, what how do you use those to kind of talk to them about how to set up a budget and to have a budget in place?
Mm. Well, so the first thing is that people have to know how much money they can actually spend
Mm,
safely in
mm,
in their world, because depending on your budget will depend on what kind of venues you're going to be able to look at, or what kind of catering you're going to be able to look at. So let's say that you have a budget of 30,000 or 20,000, and you're inviting 100 people. That's not a lot of money per person to be able to put towards your food and beverage, right?
Right.
So if you're going to do that, then I would reduce the number of people so that you have more food and beverage. On average, here in South Florida, if you're at a hotel, you're going to spend between $175 and $350 per person just for food and beverage, and that's not including service charge and tax. And so if you take your budget and you divide it by the number of people that you have coming, that gives you a price per person, right? So if you have 20,000 and you have 100 people, what is it? $200 a person. And you're spending 175 of that before service charge and tax. You've already blown your budget, and you haven't even talked about photography, florals, music, and all the other things.
Right.
Yeah. So budget's important. If you have a $20,000 budget, you can have a really beautiful backyard wedding, or have a wedding in your country club, or another location that is relatively inexpensive, but at least then you can focus on the food and the other pieces, because you know that you've taken care of the venue and the catering. Be smart about it. Not everybody gets a Ritz-Carlton wedding, and who
Right.
wants a Ritz-Carlton wedding? I mean, I've said this many times. It's like Kim Kardashian, her first wedding, what was it, like $11 million or something like that, and it lasted, what, 40 days?
Right.
What? I mean, did that wedding actually mean anything to her?
Mhm.
Probably not. I'm sure I'm going to get sued now, but but it did probably, and it was sponsored. A lot of it was sponsored, so it was a great job on the marketing there. But it didn't really mean anything. I mean, weddings are supposed to mean something to the couple. So if you start there and invite only the people that you really want to be at your wedding, and then you figure out how to make that dream come true within your budget, it can happen. You just have to be realistic about the dollars that you're spending and what you're spending it on.
Yeah, that's so true.
There's no simple answer to that. I hate to
Right.
say that, but there really is no simple answer. Just know how much money you're willing to spend on your wedding, and then figure out what kind of venues are now available to you based on those numbers.
Yeah. And like so many things, it's balance, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you want to have the nicest event you can, but we all know, and studies have shown that in a relationship, the most stressful thing on a relationship is money matters. And so if you come out of that and you have, you're already in a ton of debt, right?
Yeah.
The debt crisis that overall is already affecting this country, right? If you've created this black hole of debt that now is something that you'll be working to try and take, you're putting an undue stress on the marriage going forward.
Absolutely. And I have planned weddings that were $1 million, and I have planned weddings that were $30,000. And I can tell you that the people that went to the $30,000 wedding and the people that went to the $1 million wedding both had an amazing time. And it really is based on the love between the couple.
Mm-hmm.
The who makes the food, where it's at, all those things. I feel like if you're surrounded by good people, that your friends and family, and it's full of love and laughter, you're gonna have an amazing time.
Yep. And now, truth be told, you'll always have those one or two people that will remember one or two things that weren't up to their standards, right? But overall, when the majority of the people are there for the right reason, it's going to be a great event.
Well, I say 80%, right? When you're planning a wedding, you're never going to satisfy 100% of the people that are coming to your wedding. So you shoot for 80%. And if you can get 80% that say that was a damn good wedding, you've won big time, right?
Yep.
And I think that it's important. The big pieces that I think are really, really important is the attitude of the bride and groom. If the bride is walking around with her face all stressed out, or she looks miserable or sad, or any of those things, it it will wash over the guests like a wave.
Yep.
And then if they were having a really good time and the bride comes in and she looks upset, now everybody's upset.
Yep.
A great example of this is I had this ceremony, and we had worked forever to get this perfect outdoor scenario, right? And it was in a location that I couldn't put a tent. There was, no opportunity if their weather turned bad, but this happened to be in San Jose, so we had a very good chance of the weather being perfect, like 95% chance. But the bride and groom were really funny, and they just wanted to have a good time, and it poured. Like monsoon poured on them, and they laughed, and they were having the best time, and because they were having the best time, the guests got into it, and so everybody was running around soaking wet, but taking photos and having the best time of their life. But that was all because the bride and groom started that trend. They were the ones that set the mood and said, we're not going to let the weather affect us. This is our day. And regardless if it pours on us or not, we're going to still have a good time.
Yeah.
And still one of my favorite weddings, actually, just because everybody had such a good time.
Yeah.
Of course,
amazing how much mindset plays a role, right?
Yeah, it was a little gross 4 hours in, but yeah, it was.
So money, I mean, it doesn't make or break a wedding, but what can break a wedding? What are the things that can ruin a wedding? I think you kind of touched on it already.
Yeah, bad people. Inviting people that you don't want to come to your wedding. Don't invite people that you don't want to come to your wedding. If you wouldn't have dinner with them, don't invite them to your wedding. I know that's very difficult when you're talking about two different sides of a family coming together. The other thing is, I would really encourage couples to go have a psychologist or therapist that they start talking to before the wedding. And the reason I say that is not because that they need couples counseling. The reason I say that is that you're about to be in a pressure cooker environment full of alcohol, full of people that have spent a lifetime installing buttons, and they are going to push them constantly the day of your wedding. Push, push, push. So it's important to have a therapist to talk about these things before it gets to the wedding, so that way you have a little armor the day of the wedding, so that way you can focus on the good stuff and let that stuff roll off your back. Yeah, me as an event planner, as a wedding planner, I take on that kind of responsibility the day of. I mean, I head off all sorts of crazy conversations because I can see it. It just comes with the territory. You become a therapist as part of being in this environment. But if you're trying to do the wedding yourself, or you're doing it through a hotel without a planner, and I really would encourage somebody to have at least a confidant that you can take to the side and talk to, that has no judgment and has no connection emotionally to the family, so that way you can really have an honest conversation, talk about it, let it go, and get back to the party.
Yeah, such a great point. That's so great.
Yeah.
All right. So one question I had for you is, obviously you seem to enjoy event planning and seem to get a lot of fun and a lot of joy out of it. I talked to somebody once who said planning is the gift that our present self makes to our future self. And so I love that quote, because it really shows how important planning is. And that's just day to day planning, right? It helps so much to be a good planner.
Right.
So how do you bring so much joy into planning something that, quite frankly, could be overwhelming very quickly for a lot of people?
It's my profession. I mean, it's my chosen role. So I don't have the same stress on me as if this was pushed onto somebody, right? I mean, people get married, or they decide to get married because they love each other, not because they enjoy the planning process of planning their wedding.
Right.
When you pop the question, you're not saying, oh, and I get to plan a party. You're popping a question because you get to marry somebody. And so I can I totally understand how that stress can pile on pretty quickly, because it is overwhelming. Once you say I will, getting to the I do is a major process. I mean, just think about the idea of having to figure out, first of all, your budget, but then think about all the different kind of venues that are available out there, not just indoor, outdoor hotels, on the beach, not on the beach, but lakeside. I mean, daytime, nighttime, brunch. There are a million choices. And then that means you have to go look at all of the places and see
Mm.
which ones that you like. And then you have to look at their menu prices. And then you got to look at their contracts. And that's just the venue. And then you got to talk about catering and florals and photography and music. And then how do we decide what kind of photographer we want? How do we even know what photographers are out there? And so that's why I think that it is almost irresponsible for people not to at least consult a planner, even if you just hire them for a consultation for a couple of hours. Just listen to somebody that's an expert in the field that is willing to talk to you and guide you through the at least the big decisions and give you at least some direction, because you don't know what you don't know. And so you got to talk to somebody that does, and at least help you thwart some of the landmines that are just waiting out there for you.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Like I said, if you don't control me, I'll just keep talking. Uh, well, and a lot of people make a mistake of going, well, I can just go to a wedding show. Oh my God, wedding shows. So I think wedding shows are one of those things that are kind of a necessary evil. It's great for people that are planning their own wedding because it does give them some insight into some people that are available out there. The problem is that a lot of that what happens at a wedding show is built on emotion and not built on logic. And so people will sign contracts because they're excited. They had a glass of mimosa. They're with their girlfriends. Oh my goodness. Oh, he's going to give me 20% off. And then they sign the contract only to realize that the DJ that they just hired is $5,000, and most DJs should be around the $1,500 to $2,500 mark. So they just spent double of what they should have. And now they're going to look back at it and be upset about the fact that they got sucker punched, so to speak. Not that the DJ was doing anything wrong, but I'm just saying that knowledge is power.
Yeah. I cannot say it enough, just in my own experience with life overall. Hiring experts to at least help explain things to you that you don't understand or that you're not an
Yeah.
expert in is worth it. It's so worth it to, like you said, even have a conversation with someone who knows what they're talking about, has the experience, understands the pitfalls, understands things that you need to watch out for. Somebody like yourself when it comes to events planning. So it's a no-brainer for me. You get what you pay for. If you want to have something put together that looks like it all made sense, you're
Yes.
probably going to have to talk to an expert because that's what they do all day long.
Well, and again, if you're talking about a budget and you don't have the money to hire a planner, and when I say that, you don't have the money to hire a good planner, because there are a lot of planners out there. That doesn't mean they're good.
Right.
Invest in the 1 or 2 hours of a consultation fee with a very good wedding planner, one that's really reputable. It will save you thousands of dollars and save you hours, if not weeks, of pure hell and frustration. It is important to listen to somebody that says, okay, here are the things that I would do based on your budget, and these are the things that I would think about, as alternatives when you're talking about like decor and catering. And many times when I get into these consultations, I will actually then talk about some of the vendors that I would recommend. And I would say, you know what, there's a caterer that does a very good job, but their price point is excellent, and I think that they would be really great for your event. And I would just hand over the name and the contact information over to the couple. It is up to them, obviously, to reach out and then have to
Right.
deal with menus and pricing and contracts, because that's a whole different world. But at least they got at least a contact. You know, I'm never afraid of sharing information, never. And I think that's one thing that I think that a lot of event planners tend to shy away from, is that they think that people are just calling them out of the blue in order to sucker punch them and get their information but not hire them.
Mm.
That that rarely happens. I mean, you can typically tell pretty quickly, especially if you've been in this business as long as I have, how quickly you can quickly tell if somebody's trying to do that. And if that's the case, sometimes I'll just say, look, instead of me spending several hours on the phone and then you're not in it, can I just send you my vendor list? And then that way we can move on. I mean, there are randomly some of those conversations, but 90% of the time, 99% of the time, human beings are just not like that. I find that most people are kind. Most people are well-meaning and are walking into it as honestly as possible.
Great. Well, Keith, this has been an awesome conversation. I think we could probably go on and on for another couple of hours talking about all these different events and all the different things that you've been involved with. So, what would you like to leave my listeners with? If they took away one thing from this conversation, what would it be?
Know what you're willing to spend is number one. Secondly, don't put too much emphasis on, oh god, I really want to talk about this actually. Your anticipated experience. This is a huge mistake that a lot of people make when they are talking about their wedding, is that they worry about the anticipated experience of their guests. Most people, when they get invited to a wedding, go, great, I'm going to watch two people that are in love get married. Yay. I'm going to get to probably have a cocktail or two. I'm going to get to dance, and I'm probably going to get fed. That is their anticipated experience. It is way down there low. I mean, you don't have to do much in order to get over most people, 80% anticipated experience. So don't get caught up in your head at, we have to have it at this location because that's what people expect from me. We have to have this caterer. We have to have this florist. There's no have to when it comes to the world of wedding planning. There's a want, you want, but there's no have to. Don't assume that because you have this one particular florist or this one particular location or this one particular venue that you're going to have an amazing wedding, because that's not how it works. Solid logistics make a great wedding. Good people that you invite, that you're careful about inviting, make a good wedding. Money and location do not.
No, that's well said. And I know when I get that invite to a wedding, I'm thinking, hey, it's a night out, and I generally don't have to pay anything, right? So I get to have a night out with my wife.
That's your brain. That's what your brain does. You go, oh, date night, excellent, excellent.
Exactly.
But that's as far as you go. You don't think, oh, I'm going to see these dramatic centerpieces,
right?
Or I'm going to say a 12-piece band. None of that comes into your thought process when you get an invite in the mail to go to a wedding. So don't get caught up in that if you're planning one. Do what you like for you, and the people that know you and love you will get it because they know and love you. So they'll totally get why you made the choices you made.
Yeah. And especially most have had that experience where they've either done it themselves or they've been involved with planning somebody else's. And I find that if somebody's gone through that for their own wedding or helped someone else plan theirs, there is so much more understanding and ability to say, yeah, do what you guys want. We're going to have a great time. Don't worry about us. We're going to love it. Right.
And empathy. I think you're looking for empathy.
Oh, that's the word. That is the word. Absolutely.
We have empathy for what you're going through.
Yep.
Yeah. And enjoy the process, because most of the time you only get this one chance. You know, you get one moment, enjoy the heck out of it. No matter what happens to you, that you're still going to get to be married at the end of the day. And no matter what happens. So enjoy the rest of it as much as you possibly can, and hire a wedding planner, because then you can enjoy all of it.
Yeah. One quick experience from my wedding reception. We walk in, we get introduced, we walk in and we look over to the left, and we were planning on doing the cake after the dinner. We look over to the left and the cake's starting to lean. The top part's starting to lean, and we're like, we'll cut the cake now. And so we take the first couple portions off, we cut the cake and move on to dinner, and away we went. And
but wasn't it fun? I mean, didn't that add to the memory of it? I mean, because now you're like, oh my God, you remember when the cake almost fell over when we were walking in? That's the best. It's those moments that you will remember forever and laugh at it. Enjoy it, because human beings are messy. We're messy people. We just are. And so you got to let the messiness happen and revel in it.
Yeah, the beauty's in the imperfection sometimes.
It really is.
Yep.
It really is.
Well, Keith, this was so great. If someone wanted to learn more about the great work that you're doing, is KeithWillardEvents.com. Is that the best place for them to reach?
Yeah, or Instagram at Keith Willard. That seems to be a really popular place at the moment.
And if you want to listen to a great podcast, because I think Keith and I may have the only two podcasts out there. But if you wanted to listen to another great podcast, you can listen to Keith's. It's called Behind the Veil, where he goes on weekly. It's live weekly shows on Tuesdays where they actually answer questions and have different guests on to talk about all things wedding.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, and we do talk about all things wedding. I mean, we've had everybody from David Tatera to local therapists to talk about mental health and wedding planning. It's we have a really good time. So yeah, every Tuesday at 2, but it's always available on any podcast channel, Behind the Veil. And actually, if you want a hands-free experience, ask Alexa to play Behind the Veil by Keith Willard.
All right.
No, Alexa, don't play it. Anyway.
Don't do it now.
Don't do it right now. Right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Keith. Thank you. Appreciate the time, and good luck to you as you continue to create awesome events.
Thank you for having me on the show. I had a really, really, really good time, and I think you're doing a great job because I love this. I mean, the dad who knows nothing. I mean, that's the best way to walk into a conversation. It's like, I know nothing, teach me, and let me ask my questions so I can, pass on that information and that knowledge. So thank you for allowing me to be a part of that journey.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for joining me, Keith. This was great.
Awesome.
Thank you for joining us on our journey to learn about various topics. If you'd like to get in touch with the Dad Who Knows Nothing, connect with him at the Dad Who Knows Nothing on TikTok and Instagram, or Dad Knows Zero on Twitter. If you have a moment and you like this episode, drop us a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. Have a great day and enjoy your journey through this game called life.